Welcome to the Free Cities podcast. My name is Timothy Allen, and this is the official podcast of the Free Cities Foundation. Hello, greetings from here in Dubai, and welcome to episode number 70 of the Free Cities podcast. Forgive me, I'll have to be brisk with this introduction. We're filming our documentary on special economic zones, and the schedule is, as you would imagine, incredibly full. However, I've found a small window of 20 minutes between interviews to record this. Today's guest is a digital nomad and perpetual traveller, Danilo Silva. Now, Danilo is the C.O.O. of Settee, a Brazilian company that, in their own words, quotes, help free people become citizens of the world. In other words, they advise on relocation, geoarbitrage, and flag theory in general. As you would imagine, our conversation revolves around these topics. Where are the hot countries to relocate to, short or long term, golden visas, tax havens, or just havens of freedom in general? Listen on for more of the same. Just one caveat before we proceed. We recorded this interview just before Javier Milei won the presidency in Argentina. So when we're discussing Argentina, it's the pre-Milei version. Anyway, enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you all next week with some new discussions from here in the Middle East. But in the meantime, of course, please just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Danilo Silva. So you're Brazilian, but you live in Tbilisi.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a very 21st century situation there. I take it you're a digital nomad.
Yeah, at the moment I am, yes.
How long have you been a digital nomad for then?
Well, officially 2 years, but there was like the spirit of my life that was traveling quite a lot. Mostly I was studying in France for a bit. I started a master's degree there at Sorbonne. Didn't really adapt, so I started to make the math. To get an apartment in Paris was just like stupidly expensive, and I would be saving money seeing places. So I went to Portugal for a bit. I had a cousin living there in Porto, stayed there for about a month. Then I went to Faro. I got like some summer job there, stayed there for 2-3 months. I still had the valid visa for the master, so it didn't matter. So just like slowly going back to France, because I had a flight scheduled in August back to Rio. So just like, yeah, I'm done in France. I know that's not what I want to be.
France?
Yeah, so I had this valid visa. I don't have as much money as I'd like to stay there. And decided to just, it's a bit of a geoarbitrage, I could say, you know. Yeah, my time would be better spent and my money would be better spent elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's basically what I did. So it's just like escaping a bad situation, and kind of was a nomad situation, but was not, you know. What's
your issue with France then? What is it about France that's?
Yeah, all bad ideas come out of France, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm originally a psychologist. I was not exactly a therapist. My focus was more on ratings, on neuroscience, on the more scientific approach of it. You know, I was working in a lab in Rio. It was like one of the forefront neuroscientific research labs in Brazil. I was like had a very good experience there, but I had to do some clinic experience in order to graduate. My clinic was in ratings, so basically that person that would tell what's wrong with you. So run some tests, and then I'll give a recommendation for some treatment. Not so different from what I do nowadays. It's basically, I mean, it's not as dire as psychological disorders, but in the same, people come, tell me their life story, and based on that, I give some recommendations or some places for them to reside, some countries where they could have a good synergy with that base for an offshore company, some offshore banks that they can get. and help them maximize their freedom through flag theory. I touched a little bit on that in my speech yesterday. I was mostly focused on case studies. I didn't want to go very technical about it, especially because last year, Francisco, I'm not sure if you had him in the podcast already.
The podcast wasn't running this time last year. It wasn't. The idea was dreamt up at last year's conference. So that's yeah. So no, I didn't speak to him. No.
Oh yeah, he's just great. I'm very lucky to be working with him. Very proud of it. I'm learning a lot. He learned a lot from Tito, so by proxy, kind of getting a little bit of that water that I drink.
What is your job at? You're at Settee, aren't you?
That's right.
And what is it you do? I think most people do roughly the same thing there. You're all in the business of advising people, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people doing that. We're mostly focusing on Brazilians. Not Brazilians. The Portuguese-speaking market. That mostly means Brazilians. It's like a big chunk of the people we helped. Of course, we still have some clients out there in Portugal, but the co-founders of it are Francisco and Rafael Lima. They're both ambassadors for Free Cities Foundation. And Rafael has the second largest libertarian YouTube channel in the world. Yeah. Definitely the biggest one in Brazil.
Rafael's been on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. It's funny that he was here, not Francisco.
Well,
I know it's what happened. Yeah,
I saw him in. I saw him at a Bitcoin conference. That's right. I interviewed him. He was at a Bitcoin conference.
Yeah, he draws quite a lot, and
Yes.
because of the following that Rafael has, it's only natural that most of the people that follow us that became clients are Brazilian. And Brazil also makes it very easy for you to be a libertarian. It's very evident that government doesn't work. They don't know what they're doing. No, we just elected a career criminal as a president last year.
Who's that?
Lula.
Really?
He got arrested for the biggest corruption scandal in Latin American history, which is saying quite a lot.
Describe it then. What was it?
I think to cut it short, I could just give you that, and that will give you a little bit of how bad it is. While he was getting investigated, if I'm not mistaken, 5 Peruvian presidents got arrested.
Right. Just leave it at that then.
Yeah.
Wow. So the reasons that people want to leave Brazil then is, number one, president.
There are different degrees of unsafety. There is the literal sense of it. So some of the cities are not exactly as safe as they once were. Like a lot of drug-related crimes that happen, especially in the bigger cities like Rio, São Paulo, and other capitals in Brazil, especially in the northeast of Brazil, for that matter. There is economic uncertainty, because the country has been in a crisis since forever now, it feels. I left Brazil the first time almost 10 years ago, in 2014. At that time, the euro was worth 1 real. No, sorry, 1 euro was 2 reais, the Brazilian currency.
Reais. Uh-huh.
It means like Rio or royal at the same time. It's kind of like the same word.
Weren't they called reals at one point?
Yeah, real is that in singular.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
It's all good.
The real. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's worth like 6.
Really?
At some point last year, I think it was 7 or 8, maybe, or 7 probably.
Wow.
So not as bad as Argentina. I was in Argentina actually in February, and now it's like at least 3 times more expensive right now. Uh-huh. Like the rate was $1 was 360 pesos. Now it's close to 1,000 last I checked.
In Brazil, though, are people cognizant of trying to protect their money? Is that something that you think about on a daily basis? Like I know in Argentina, people really think about it. Try and spend money quickly, buy things on a credit card so that they pay a month later and it's cheaper. Yep. In Brazil, because obviously €2, it's only the inflation's not too bad. But is it something that's still on people's minds?
Oh, definitely.
And how do they get around it then?
There's quite an old story, because in the 80s we had a very bad economic crisis, hyperinflation. It was not the only country to suffer with that. I suppose it was some aftermath of the oil crisis in the 70s. But people were already like, something happened in the 90s that they froze people's savings to try to control the economy. It was like one of those ham-fisted type of solutions that some president tried to do. And so not even savings accounts were safe. So people don't have trust in Brazilian institutions and Brazilian banks. So it's only natural to be looking to do it outside of the country.
How do people deal with it on a daily basis, though, in the country? Like, say you were paid in reals or whatever, and your wages come in. What do you do with that? Is it bad enough to think on a short term, I need to protect? Or what if you do want to save? Where do people put their money if they do want to save money?
Yeah, most people are not exactly at this level that they would be able to use foreign structures to protect their assets. Of course, you could still buy euros, you could buy dollars, but there are taxes on top of that. It's this fee of like about 5% every time you exchange reais for anything else. So it doesn't really become a valid alternative. There's people that have like remote jobs that are able to get like paid in dollars, so they keep this money abroad. For a while, they just bring in what they need to live to pay their bills. But most people are just struggling. They don't have other options other than Brazilian bank, Brazilian structures. And a lot of the job we do is like trying to show, because people feel, let me take a step back. Because everything in Brazil is difficult for people that are there, everybody assumes that elsewhere will be difficult, like twice as difficult, because, it's English, it's not Portuguese, it's a language that I might not be very comfortable with. If I have any issues, do I have to travel to that country to get it solved? And it's not that complicated, but because everything in Brazil is complicated, they just have this assumption, and they assume only millionaires are able to access it. And it's not that difficult. It's actually better and cheaper than using Brazilian structures a lot of the time. It's just a matter of planning and learning what's out there, and that's the gist of it.
So who are your kind of regular clients then? Are we talking like middle class Brazilians, or is it something of only the sort of wealthy can sort of tap into?
I wouldn't say there are different profiles of people that we help. There is definitely they need to be at a certain pay rate, let's say, not pay rate, salary rate, let's say, to be able to actually take advantage of all those things that we preach about. So maybe if you're like making $1,000 a month, there's a lot we can do for you. For all the other people, we just have a blog where to explain, so people can just maybe try to find some remote jobs, some job that pays in dollars, in euros, in like stronger currency. And Brazil is a very good country if you have foreign income. It's very cheap to live like that. $1,000, you're just very comfortable, even in a city like Rio or like Florianopolis.
Really?
But for a local at a minimum wage in Brazil should be around, $250 if you make the conversion.
Okay, then. So can we use an example of someone earning $1,000 a month? What do you suggest? What are the top suggestions for people to make their lives better?
Honestly, the best thing would be to just leave. Then you are able to pay zero taxes. You have a better safety, there are a lot of things that people have to spend money on because of all this uncertainty, trying to make their lives a bit more stable in a way, things that you don't need to do on a regular basis elsewhere. So that's the easiest thing to do, but for a lot of people, that's not an option because their business is very localized. Maybe they're like a doctor, for example. A lawyer is not exactly a job that's very easy to take elsewhere. Or they have like some elderly parents, they need to be there, So you can try to protect your assets, maybe starting an offshore company, say Nevis, somewhere in the Caribbean. There are some laws that might come by the next year that might trying to make it more difficult. Even if you don't make a profit in a foreign company, the Brazilian government will try to tax you. Not sure how this will work, but there's definitely an agenda. They're very focused on trying to attack people that try to use any structure that's foreign to make their life easier. So it's a bit of a being between a rock and a hard place. You can either stay and suffer or just try to go against the law in a way, not exactly necessarily committing a crime, but going in a gray zone that's like a bit of uncertainty. there is not a good solution. If you try to, and that's something that always been the case in Brazil. If you try to have a business, try to follow all the rules, you're not gonna go further. It's either you become a friend of someone in government, or you try to just slowly take your risk out of Brazil, trying to do business abroad, and not sure if it's making any sense.
Your own personal strategy, though, by the sounds of it, was to move to Georgia. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm currently in Georgia. It's a country that has territorial taxation. It's 0% if it's sourced from abroad.
So you're essentially living in Tbilisi tax-free.
That's right.
Your income comes from Brazil?
No.
Or America, somewhere.
Yeah, we have an American LLC. Yeah. So that's the source of my income.
Yeah. And why did you pick Tbilisi then, other than the 0% tax?
Typically, I pick the next country based on convenience. And maybe there's an event happening there, so maybe it would be nice to stay at least a month in a place so I can have my proper routine. I can go to the gym. I can, I have a favorite place for like a restaurant, for a bakery. Have a normal life. And there was some events that were happening in Tbilisi I was quite interested at. There was an event for Statonos, the original franchise that we are part of. And it's a country that's been my radar for quite a while. It's a very good country for digital nomads for a lot of reasons. And one reason that was a bit unexpected is that everybody that I meet there is like in a very similar situation, like around the same place in life that I am. A lot of like-minded people that are trying. Maybe they're not necessarily as agoristic as I am, but they're definitely trying to make something for themselves, trying to build a project, having a startup, or something like building an app. So it's been very good in this. The amount of connections can be especially very relevant to the type of work I do.
So is Georgia? What I mean, I'm not a digital nomad. I would be if I was younger now. I was actually an analog nomad, and I did travel for nearly 3.5 years, I think, in total. But this is pre-internet. And it didn't really... We went to the places that... I mean, most people who made a living made it out of teaching English, say. But at a language school, that was about all you could do. But I know that the whole digital nomad scene now is quite phenomenal and quite of its time. What do you think the future of that scene is? What do you think? Where do you think it goes? Because one of the things we talk about a lot on this podcast is if the Free Cities idea comes to fruition, as we hope it will, normally the first movers, the first people to come to these places are digital nomads. But also, digital nomads travel the most, and they're probably the least likely to stay for a long period of time. Where do you see the movement in the future? And in particular, you're young now, I take it, and you can move...
I turned 30 in March.
30, right.
So I'm about to retire anytime soon.
Yeah, right. But as a 30-year-old, where do you see yourself as a digital nomad in another 5 years? Do you think you'll do it forever?
Honestly, I don't. I'm actually not a big fan of traveling, which seems mental when I have the lifestyle that I am. Just really hate taxes. I hate bureaucracy. I want to own my own destiny. That's why I live the way I do. And one of the reasons why I'm picking Georgia is a country I can stay 1 year visa-free. I don't have any second passports. That's something I would like to have at some point. I was considering Spain for a while, to stay there for about 2 years. I can get naturalized. I mean, there'll be total about 3 years because then I qualify and need to wait for the paperwork to be done. But still, it's a country that I like quite a lot. And there are some tax incentives for newcomers. I could be paying a fixed rate of 15%. It's not great, but still, I get a passport out of that, so it might be a worthwhile investment. So over the last years, I've been trying to take a slower approach. And even when I was traveling, I was trying to stay at least 3 months in the same country. Last year, I changed countries 18 times, so that was a bit much, So Georgia is a place I could just lay down, stay there, and just don't worry about it. Going back to the original question, I suppose it's going to be a lot easier. The cost of starting this lifestyle and quitting it is not very high. So you're not obligated to be living this lifestyle forever. You can just do it like as a transition, maybe change your careers. You want to lower your costs. You want to learn a new skill. Maybe you want to just do some volunteering work, or maybe you're just burned out on a previous job and want to try something new and just take it slow, just like do some small things, go to a place where lower cost of living, like Southeast Asia, for example, Latin America. That could make sense also. But it appeals to different types of people. It's not exactly one centralized type of person that would just benefit from this lifestyle. And also, you don't need to be a nomad necessarily to benefit from certain aspects of this life. That's when flag theory comes into place, I guess. You can make a very decent flag theory strategy even though you stay in the same place.
How do you mean?
Depends on what you want to optimize. There's also not an umbrella type of solution that would fit all. But say, for example, there are some countries, for example, like Georgia, like the Emirates, you could just have your offshore company somewhere else. You live there, you lower your taxes, or maybe don't pay taxes at all. Maybe it's a place with a lower cost of living. It also has this type of advantages like Paraguay, Southeast Asia, in Bali. There are some nomad visas also. So you are able to stay in the same place for an entire year. And every month there's a new country releasing one. So even for people that really don't enjoy traveling, they just want just a breeze of fresh air. You want to change a place for a bit just to reconnect in some way. It doesn't matter what this reconnection that you need is. I think it's a very valid solution. It's about choice in the end of the things. You just get yourself more options that way.
Do you think governments will get tired of issuing nomad visas? I mean, it's a new thing, isn't it? And they seem to work. I mean, Spain's a good example, and Portugal, I suppose. I know a lot of people that have gone there purely to get these visas. But I don't know what happens afterwards. I mean, when the visas run out, I presume people just go. So they're short-term things. Is that right?
Yeah, typically it's the last one year and can renew it for another year. And the countries that are issuing nomad visas are not exactly this. Let me go back a bit. I typically explain to people there are two types of country. There are big countries that are way too big. They don't need you. A place like, say, the US. So they can put every type of barrier in a way to filter out some people. Like, for example, a EB2 visa, which is a visa for people, high-skilled individuals, will cost you maybe $20,000 for you to get. For Europeans, that's not a big concern. You're able to access the US visa-free. But for Brazilians, for example, that's quite a big investment. If this same amount of money, you could go to Estonia, start a company, you put this money inside the company, you're able to sponsor your own visa. And that's not exactly an expense. That's money you have you can use to hire an employee, you can get equipment. So we have like two very different approaches about like Estonia, very small country. They have this deep understanding that if they are not interesting for people, they don't solve any problems, it'll be just forgotten, be maybe assimilated by Russia at some point. So they need to be interesting in some way. They need to make your life easier. They need to bring something to the table. And they do. They bring quite a lot to the table, actually. And the Estonian experiment is being a very big success. They started the e-residency. A lot of countries started to copy that. They started the nomad visas. A lot of countries copying that now also. And it's a way for those smaller countries to become relevant. And I don't see why they would just shoot themselves in the foot like that. Portugal it's canceling all those things that made it interesting in the first place. And there are good reasons for that, not from our side, but for example, the local population. An average wage in Portugal, costs about the same as a room rental in Lisbon. So all those prices are being driven up by nomads that are living there, some people that were taking advantage of the golden visa. It's not their fault. I'll blame that on the local government that was very irresponsible when making those things. But yeah, those people bring jobs. They drive the industry of like for tourism, for restaurants. So the nomads that are there in Portugal, they're definitely bringing a lot to the table too. They're being way more useful to the Portuguese people than the government is. And they're just about to let go of that. Portugal is not as stable as it is right now. A lot of, like 20, 30 years ago, they were going to Brazil, of all places, to work. And I'm afraid they might go back to that stage if they just start to be like, push out everything that makes the country interesting for foreigners.
Why do you think they did that then? Purely because the locals were complaining that prices were going up, or was there something else?
It's just like, it's typical with like socialist governments. They have a socialist party in power right now to not do things that are quite logical. So I know it seems very shallow to just call the government stupid, but that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. They also had a pretty good law legislation for cryptocurrency as well, and they've just got rid of that as well, haven't they? You now pay
They're
tax.
also very wishy-washy about it. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I'm gonna cancel that. I'm gonna introduce that," and they never follow through on it. Sometimes they're just empty threats, but that's also creates like this environment that you cannot really trust anything they say. So, is it ending? Is it not? For example, there is this route for Portuguese citizenship, which is if you're a descendant from Sephardi Jews, you'd be able to claim a Portuguese passport. They were supposed to end it by the end of this year, but they just extended again to 2024. The NHR, the non-habitual resident system, it is still a very interesting program. You can get your Portuguese taxes lowered to 20%, and foreign source income in some categories it's 0, which makes it incredibly interesting. They're announced that they would end this program. You still be able to apply until the end of the year to get, and then you have 10 years of this tax holiday. More than a holiday, it's 10 years, not exactly a holiday, but still. But I wouldn't be surprised if by some point in March next year, they just go back into the decision to say, "Oh, no, we're just keeping it."
What's the what are the other elements of Georgia then that make it an attractive place right now? I take it I know that in the digital nomad circles, there's always a hot place, isn't there? The most recent one, I think Montenegro might be one at the moment. Is that right? What's the latest in your opinion?
Eastern Europe is a place that's quite dear to my heart, especially the Balkans. And one of the biggest appeals for that region for me is the cost of living and the way I'm treated. I don't think it's exclusive for Brazilians, but every time I'm in Serbia, I'm in Bulgaria, I'm in Georgia, and people learn where I'm from, they just get very excited, just like, wow, you came from the other side of the globe to see my country, my culture. So they feel very honored and always feel very welcome there. Georgia is not exactly the better place in terms of cost of living right now. Really? Tbilisi is quite expensive at the moment.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I heard it was one of the cheapest places.
It used to be. It was even cheaper than Serbia before the war. But that happened. It's one of the countries that is still very open to Russians. It's a country that allows visa runs, so Russians can be there and just keep renewing this visa. And it's a safe place with a lot of digital nomads. So lots of those Russians are very good programmers, very good web developers. So it's a very good environment for them to be. It's a country that like a lot of people know the language, Russian, so they are easy to adapt.
When you say more expensive, do you mean rent mainly, or do you mean prices in the shops?
Mostly rent, but prices in the shop. I don't know how much it was in the shops before that, so that wouldn't be fair for me to answer. But definitely rent; it's way more expensive.
Yeah, is that one of the main things that can attract or deter you from going somewhere? Then rental prices. I presume, as a digital nomad, it probably is.
Depends where you're coming from. So it's a lot cheaper than Berlin for sure. You can get a very good apartment in a very good part of town for near the subway for $400 a month.
$400?
$500
in Berlin?
No, in Tbilisi.
In Tbilisi,
definitely
right.
not Berlin.
I was going to say.
No, see, compared to cities like Berlin, like right. Paris, like London, like Lisbon, Tbilisi is much cheaper, and there's a lot to offer for sure. Like it's very little bureaucracy also, but compared to most places in the Balkans, Belgrade, for example, could be. I mean, if you're just passing by, if your strategy is to be a tourist, a perpetual traveler, 3 months here, 3 months there, I wouldn't recommend you to go to Georgia at the moment. Just enjoy the Balkans. Go to Serbia, go to Bosnia. Very safe countries right now. Of course, don't go to a place that's a bit... stay closer to the cities, the bigger places. That's what I'm trying to say. Like Sofia, also in Bulgaria, is quite nice. Not sure that... The bigger appeal for Georgia is that you can just stay long-term there and still have those benefits of this nomadic lifestyle, even though you just fix in one single city.
When you're... As a digital nomad, when you're going to a new place like Tbilisi and you think, I'm going to stay here for a few months, say, how do you find your rental property?
Well, there are many ways. There are some websites you can do, like myhome.ge. It's one big of like this listings for rentals and such. But I just use Facebook ads.
Really?
Yeah.
And because obviously you're after something short term, you're after... I know in the UK when you need to get a new apartment, you have checks and this and that and blah, And when you're a digital nomad, I can imagine, do you ever Airbnb or is that just too expensive?
Typically I go for Airbnbs, but because I was staying longer than just 3 months, and prices for Airbnb are not very good. They're like some old Soviet buildings and I'm paying about the same as I'm paying like in a long-term rental. I just had to commit to staying there 6 months. And I was able to get a very good deal, I think, in the place I am right now.
And was that through Airbnb? The one
It's not an Airbnb. No, it's like I got an Airbnb for a week when I got to Tbilisi, just so I could just shop for apartments.
Yeah.
Then I found a place that I liked and just rented, just signed a contract, and that's it.
And you found it on Facebook?
That's right. And the only thing I needed was a passport to prove that I was not Russian, because some people, because Georgia has a interesting thing going on at the moment because the government is very pro-Russia, but people are not quite as much. So despite the country being welcoming to Russians, you have a hard time opening a bank account, have a hard time in some places, especially in certain parts of Tbilisi, to find someone that's willing to rent for you. So maybe you would have to spend more money than you usually would. Some places like Batumi, they don't have such problems. They're just like... more welcoming, I guess, than people in Tbilisi. But for my landlady, she was from Megreli, which is like near Abkhazia. So she had this history of, her family suffered a lot when the Russians invaded it.
What do you do about banking as well? Like if you're traveling that much, are there better banks than others, or are there ones that digital nomads love more than any other banks? Give you good rates of exchange, or I don't know.
My experience in European fintechs, to be exact, has been quite good.
Which one?
European fintechs in general, but specifically Revolut and C.O.O. C.O.O. is banking in Gibraltar. They allow you to have a balance in US dollars and Bitcoin. You can make and receive payments in USDC, USDT, British pounds, and euros.
And so can you pay on a machine in a shop?
Yep, it's a MasterCard card, so just works just fine anywhere else.
And you're holding USDT or something, but when you pay them, obviously they get...
Yeah, they give you a commission fee exchange, so you get the true rate every time you use it.
Revolut
also has that. Most of these European fintechs have this feature. You should just a lot of them can get it for free. Revolut, for example, can get an account for free. N26 also.
So, and you can take that with you everywhere now. I mean, what about even Brazil? Can you use it in Brazil?
Yeah, no problem. It's objectively better than a Brazilian bank.
But you're holding dollars and Bitcoin.
Yep.
So when you pay...
But that's specifically the Gibraltar bank that I mentioned. Revolut is a multi-currency bank. You can hold as many currencies as you want. Not as many, probably some weird currency somewhere they wouldn't be able, but the main ones, maybe, 70 currencies you can have it.
And how much do they charge to change money?
0.
Really?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
I think I pay... I do pay a small amount. What am I? Starling. Do you know that bank account? Starling Bank is a good one, but it's euro and pound. I am. But if I exchange, even in my own app, if I exchange pound to euro, they charge me like 0.5%. or something. I know
100% is not bad.
I know. Can we talk? I didn't see your talk because I was here doing this. Can you kind of run through with me the main points of your talk? In particular, well, whatever. I mean, what was the nuts and bolts of what you were saying on stage yesterday?
Yeah, my main objective with that presentation was trying to simplify how we create those strategies for our clients. So I was focusing on case studies, showing what type of result, what change we can bring to people's lives. Because this plan is more than just taxes. Tax-friendly countries you can get it in every continent. It's much more like a lifestyle type of planning. So depends a lot on what type of life you want to have. Say a family that wants to have kids and want to homeschool them is a very different plan than, for example, a Brazilian doctor that just wants to retire and just enjoy the money he built throughout his whole life.
Okay, so start with the family then.
Yeah, so I brought 3 case studies. Was one, the software developer. He was based in Berlin. He had a wife. They wanted to start a family. Berlin, it's quite a special type of city, isn't it? So for a lot of people, that is not exactly the place you want to raise your children. But he had a very stable job. He had a good life. It was very comfortable. But he was a bit, maybe should see what's up, what's there. He got a job offer in Prague here and decided to take a chance. It was a lot less than he was getting paid in Berlin. But then he started to make the math because cost of living in Prague is better than Berlin. Taxes are much better here. And in the end of all of that, despite the pay cut, he'll be getting more money in the end of the month. And this is a country that allows homeschooling. So he would be able to pass exactly the values he wanted to his children. He would just be able to do exactly how he envisions it. He wouldn't be needing to be afraid of the agenda of German politicians.
What was his language that he spoke, by the way? He was an English speaker.
I didn't reveal his name, his true name and the country. He was based in Berlin, but he was not German.
Right. I was going to say, because are there lots of jobs in Prague, for example, where you don't need to speak Czech? Obviously.
Yeah, he spoke English. Yeah, he uses English in the companies he worked at.
Yeah, okay. And the other examples?
Yeah, the other story was about this med school student. She was dating this dude that was a digital nomad, and those are very different strategies. If you have a regular job, the best thing you do, like a doctor, for example, the best strategy for you to go, say that you're changing countries, you don't want to stay where you are. You go to the place that will pay you best, right? That's one of the things you would want to optimize. But typically, those places also have the highest cost of living and the highest taxes. Some exception to that is the UAE. It's a very good country for doctors also. It's very easy for you to get the revalidation of your degree. So you can still work as a doctor there. It's just like this quick test that you do. It's much easier than the US, for example. But for a digital nomad, it doesn't matter where you are. You might as well just get a boat and get Starlink, and that's it. You're not in a country, just deep in the Atlantic Ocean, but you're still able to provide your services. So typically the best strategy for a digital nomad is go to the cheapest possible country that's safe enough for the things you want to. Some people like to go to Colombia because they are a bit more open to some substance there, but it's not exactly a safe country, but you can manage. Some people don't need that, so they might just go to Southeast Asia, So depends a lot on the lifestyle you want to have, but the point here is just you go to the cheapest country with the cheapest taxes. So it's very hard to manage those two worlds together. And that case was about finding some alternatives to just have the least trade-offs and a strategy that would make work for both their careers. It doesn't make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And lastly was a case about censorship. I was someone that came across, was an influencer, had a podcast in his home country. He got canceled because of his political views. And then he started fresh. He started a second podcast. We actually were his guests in both podcasts, the first one and the new one. So he was very familiar with the things he did, but when people never take action, they know the storm might come, but they take any type of preparation to avoid some of the damage, some of the chaos that might arise from that. That was what happened to him. So he got his assets seized. His bank account was cleaning up his local government.
Is this in Russia?
I want to disclose the country.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. I got the authorization from any of those people to talk about it, but of course I cannot give too much detail about it. But yeah, he got into the situation. He had to leave the country. He had to just, and he built another in that country. So he had to start new in a new country, in a place that nobody knows him. And that all could have been rather easily prevented. Should have done just a little bit of planning. But it was just like leaving it for tomorrow, maybe tomorrow to do something, maybe tomorrow do something, tomorrow never comes. And then it's too late. So it's a bit of a cautionary tale type of case.
Okay, then what as some, I don't know, you don't know much about me, but what would you advise me to do in preparation for the future?
What are the biggest fears you have at the moment?
Don't have a huge amount. I mean, I don't expect to be cancelled for my opinions. And even if I was, I don't care because, for example, a podcast, you can't cancel a podcast. A podcast is always available. I suppose I could be, in the distant future, an enemy of the state in the UK where I live. I think the thing I'm most worried about would be for example, property tax that suddenly appears, and now I have a debt on my house that I don't have. I live in a pretty remote place, away from civilization, and I have no debts, but I live a very simple life. And the only thing that could screw it up would be a new tax that I wasn't prepared for, or something like that. Other than that, I think things are pretty good.
All right. I mean, property tax is something that you wouldn't be able to prevent by using offshore.
Yes.
Yeah, there'll be fraud, basically.
Yeah.
So that's something that, I mean, the only way you could prevent it would be just to not have it anymore, so which is not exactly a solution.
Well, no, I would think it was. I mean, if my government suddenly turned around one day and said, we've run out of money, we need to tax everyone 10% on their property each year, that would be a lot of money for me, because the house is quite expensive, even though we've built it up over many, many, many years, or most of our wealth is stored in that house. That would be an issue, because now if I don't find that money each year, I'm getting myself into debt. So the thought would be, I would think about moving to get away from it, sell that, take the money and go and position myself somewhere else.
Yeah, but it's a very invasive solution.
Yes.
Just like, for example, in this podcaster's example, just, leave the country. That was the only solution he was left in the end of it. So, which is not ideal for many, many reasons. Yeah, it's a less resort type of situation I'd prefer. So anything that prevents you from taking this ultimatum, let's say, would be desirable. So
what's the general opinion at Settee, for example, of the UK as a place, a place to relocate to?
For a lot of people, it makes sense to just go to the first world. It's more stable than Brazil. There's less uncertainty. It's far from perfect, but as a stepping stone, makes a lot of sense. The only country we actually don't really recommend in the first world is Canada. It's objectively worse than going to the US. Okay, it's hard to get to the US, it's expensive, but so is Canada. So Canada is not that much better with immigration, with cost of living, especially not with taxes. The US still make a lot of sense for people that want to make money. So if you want to spend the next 10 years building yourself, just creating some reserves, and then you go to a cheaper country with cheaper taxes, it's not a bad plan at all,
What about Canada's political
There is
situation?
Also another issue, people that are leaving Brazil because of concerns about what might do politically there, about being censored for their opinions. I wouldn't say Canada is much better. Okay, they don't have a career criminal, a convicted criminal as a president or prime minister in that case. So it's not that dire, so it still would be an upgrade. But the thing is that a lot of people come to us actually asking about Canada, and there's just, of all the options they have, there's often the worst one.
I think Canadians would be really disappointed to hear that, because Canadians seem to really love their country. And I love the country side. I like the place. But I'm very wary of what's been happening politically there recently, especially during the pandemic. They had a very authoritarian mindset going into the pandemic, which has stayed, it appears. I mean, they are starting to legislate podcasts.
Really?
Yes, I heard about it last week. They are...
Not approved opinions.
Exactly.
Which
I mean, it's a difficult thing to do. I don't really know how you censor podcasts, because podcasts come out on a feed. They could censor the apps, but then you could just get a different app, couldn't you? I think what it is if you're running a podcast out of Canada, then you now have to answer to the government. You know, obviously no one can stop people listening to this podcast, or as long as they've got a computer or a smartphone or whatever. There's no way. There's always going to be an app that will download the feed, the RSS feed.
But also depends on how much people crave your content. So let's say they are just using Spotify for that, and then you're out of Spotify. They might just, I really want to follow this content creator to the very end of it. There's some people that will be that loyal, sure, but it won't be 100% of our followers. A lot of people just just find something else on Spotify. I don't really need that content. Some people just be like that, you know. So it's more than just an inconvenience of having to switch from platform to platform. So they can really make your life hard, and they just snuff it, like the people that are trying to get your access to it.
So what are the other countries then in the sort of Europe, Americas? Which are the countries that you find are better options? The so-called stable countries, let's say.
Yeah, as I mentioned, depends a lot what type of strategy you're looking for. So if you're working remotely, then just go to a place that don't pay taxes. But maybe you don't like those places. Like you don't like the Caribbean because you're a winter type of person. You know,
who's that?
There are such people, actually.
I've never met them, thank God.
I actually have a bit of penguin blood myself, not literally. Yeah. You know, despite being born in Rio. Rio is a city that doesn't have winters.
Yeah.
What's officially winter there has 20 degrees Celsius. So, yeah.
Why don't you position yourself in Brazil, though? If you're getting foreign income, Brazil must be a pretty good place to be, apart from the instability, let's say. But it's not that bad, is it?
It is a good place to be if you have money. So, as I mentioned, a lot of the clients there are getting paid for, say, the digital nomad clients sometimes. They could just have an offshore company to receive the payments from those clients they have abroad, and they bring a small part of what they earn to pay their bills in Brazil. The leftover money they can just reinvest and do whatever they want. So you can have a very good life, a very good quality of life this way. But there are some actions the local government is doing right now. They're going to make it very inconvenient. It's not official yet, so I might just be doomsaying, but I'm not too optimistic about it, sadly. I wish I could just be there, just close to my family, my friends, and just not have to be worried about any of that, but it's not exactly the case. On the other hand, it's a very good country for foreigners. It's something that we approach a lot when we talk about flag furies, that very often when you're someone else's country, you're treated as a guest. So you get better treatment than a local. That's the case, for example, for Portugal. So if you come from abroad, you don't need to pay taxes for up to 10 years, depending on how you do it, of course. But yeah, you have a tax break for 10 years, but a local has to pay Social Security, have crazy rates of personal income tax. And on top of that, they just don't have the best salaries in it. So how do you survive when you're a local there in Portugal and everybody else has a better deal? Feels unfair. The same as Brazil. Like if you're a foreigner and you go there, we have a nomad visa. You can stay 1 year visa free. So it makes a lot of sense for you. Argentina also, a Brazilian working in Argentina has 5 years of tax breaks, which makes no sense. But they just give you special treatment, not because you're Brazilian, but like a foreigner working in Argentina. 5 years of tax exemptions.
I know a few people who go to Argentina right now simply for the financial gains. But
it's amazing for Geoarbitrage right now. It's insane.
Yeah. Have you lived there yourself?
I was there in February this year.
Can you describe it? I mean,
I was in Palermo.
They are actually. I mean, is it hyperinflation or is it just very large inflation? What's the inflation rate currently?
It might be close to 200 right now.
200%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, literally crossing out prices on the menu of a restaurant and putting a new one. Yeah.
I was there in Palermo, which is like the best neighborhood in Buenos Aires. Consequently, the best neighborhood to live in Argentina. And some people even claim that's the best place to live in Latin America, period. A lot of people, when talking about South America, they are very concerned about safety. But safety is not exactly chaotic. It's very localized. So if you know where you're going, and especially where not to go, you're fine. So in this example of Argentina and Palermo, nothing happens. It's perfectly safe. That's where all the politicians, all the celebrities live. So crime is not allowed to happen. It sounds silly to put it like that, but yeah, they have like more policing than other parts of town. Same, for example, in Rio, if you're in the south part of Brazil, like say in Ipanema, in Copacabana, you have a much safer experience than if you go to Pavuna, which is like this faraway neighborhood there in Rio. Because location matters a lot, maybe more than in Europe, perhaps. Not as much because you have places like Paris, Gare du Nord is not that good. So yeah, so knowing your place means a lot. So I was paying $400 a month while living there in Palermo with utilities.
With what, apartment, one bedroom apartment?
Yeah.
$400 a month.
With utilities. I was right in front of the subway for the Botanic Garden of Buenos Aires. There was a steakhouse very close to my house, like 5 minutes away, that I could go for all you can eat buffet that included dessert for $5 each. Yeah, and very good meat. Something that's very interesting about Argentina right now is that, and I think that's one of the things that are keeping the country together to some extent. I feel that if Brazil went through what Argentina was, it would be just everything would be in flames already, like long ago, actually. But I feel that the Argentinian is such a proud person that despite everything falling apart, he won't allow himself to, for example, he has a restaurant, he will not cut corners and give you worse food. You try to maintain the quality, even though like you might be broke after that. And same with like leather goods. They continue to make the best type of leather goods possible, even though everything is falling apart. So I got like my mom a gift, a full leather bag there for 20 euros. Something here in Prague might cost like, I don't know, like 300 euros maybe, the same type of things. So yeah.
Why did you leave Argentina? That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so I had a girlfriend at the time. That's actually something that could be interesting to go about dating as a nomad. I think that's something that might be interesting to talk to. But I had this girlfriend at the time. She worked remotely for a Chilean company. So, she was not sure about, is this lifestyle for me? So we decided to make a trial run. We spent a month there in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, actually. Then went to Rosario for half a month. And eventually we returned to Rio, just to give her like a taste of what my life is, and to see if, I want to continue this lifestyle with you. Let's travel the world.
And?
Well, it was very good, but in the end it didn't work out. She might become a nomad at some point, but we had some differences. We're still very close friends, She still visits my mom from time to time. It was a good breakup, but yeah.
How did you, I forgot to ask, how did you find your apartment in Argentina? Facebook. So as in Facebook Marketplace. You go on Facebook Marketplace and you type apartment. with the location, you use that location tool, don't you?
Yeah.
And it shows you, wow, is that...
You can use Airbnb also, you could use Booking. But in Argentina, it's a bit confusing because of the blue rate. So there's the official exchange rate for the dollar, not just the dollar, for the euro, for Brazilian reais, also for any foreign currency, which is just a suggestion from the national government. It's like, this is a rate for like $1 is worth, say, 200 pesos at the time I was there. But in the street, you get double that for every dollar or every real or every euro or every British pound. Because they have a cap on the amount of money you can exchange every month. It's Argentinian, so it's something like $200 or something. And you have an environment of hyperinflation, just your money is worthless every passing day. People want to get as many dollars because even if they have to just get it for half price, like sell their pesos for half price, it's still better than just waiting a month for the next rate.
Do you have to take cash dollars in though to sell them in places like that?
Not really. It was actually way more convenient than I expected. The better rate that you can get is with cash dollars. Even some shops that give you a better rate than Western Union if you pay them directly in dollars. So at that time, the Western Union rate was 360. So $1 gave you 360 pesos. But if you were to a shop, they will give you 420.
What about Bitcoin? Is it used at all?
Yeah, there are some exchanges there for Bitcoin, for stables, but they still is not as good as a rate as cash dollars. Sometimes you get a better deal with dollars than euros, despite euros being worth more than dollars. It's just because there's higher demand for that. Because people understand dollars, they can get rid of dollars very fast. Because there are a lot of economies in South America that are dollarized. Like Ecuador, for example, they don't have legal tender; they just use dollars daily. Paraguay, they have their own currency, but everybody just uses dollars. Uruguay, from what I understand, to a big extent, also works like that.
El Salvador is the dollar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for Argentina to have this personal reserve in dollars makes a lot of sense. And it's a lot easier for him to get rid of it than for euros. So if you're to the same situation, euros in your hand and try to buy something at a shop, you might get the same 420.
In a local shop in Argentina, can you pay with a card or an app? You can, yeah. Is that quite universal now?
Yeah, Visa gives you the tourist rate, so that's at that time was 340, so a bit less than Western Union. It seems quite confusing right now because there's so many things to take into account. But I mean, for convenience, paying with card was the best way.
Paying with a card.
Yeah, but to get a lesser rate than with cash.
Not to take cash in and change. Oh yeah, you can't because of the inflation.
Yeah. There was a strategy that I only thought about after I left. It was to open a bank account in Argentina and use Western Union to send money directly to it. Because there's an issue that I had quite often is that I'll go to Western Union to get some pesos, but they don't have enough pesos to give me. So just go to the app and just like, I want to exchange $100 for pesos. And they don't have as many bills to give me for that amount of money that I want to exchange.
Did you speak to many people, Argentinians, about what their strategy is to mitigate inflation? Like, what do they do? Like, what I can't understand is how do you run a shop if, what do you do with your money when you're running a shop? Because you're getting a lot of money. You're not going to put it in the bank. You're not going to save it. You've got to spend it. What do you do? Spend it on more stock to put back in the shop or something? Because you need something that's going to hold the value hold the value.
I don't know. I have no idea how they're surviving still. It's, as I said, I believe if that happened in my country, everything will be already in flames. So it's a miracle that they're still able to survive despite all of that.
I know. I think it's probably coming to a lot of places. I wouldn't even be surprised if it came to the US dollar at some point, because I know there's a lot of demand for the US dollar, which makes hyperinflation quite hard. But, certainly it's easy to predict that I mean, I don't know. What's the inflation rate in Brazil at the moment? Did you say it's like...
It's not that high, actually. I thought things would be a lot worse now. But there are a lot of things I could criticize Lula for, but he's definitely not stupid. So I was expecting him to play safe in the first year, and then by second and third year start to actually push for his agenda. That has been the case so far, I'd say. There were some reforms that were passed this year, but not as big as I thought there would be. So inflation rate is already like 7%, maybe. I don't know. I don't really follow those things.
I mean, that is high, though. I mean,
yeah,
7% is not that high. You know,
because the euro had what 9% inflation last year.
Yeah. In a lot of places in Europe around, and that's the inflation that they tell you. That doesn't really include things that inflate a lot. Really, you know, they use a basket of, you know, things to derive the exchange, the inflation rate, and it's actually, you know, house prices, for example, inflated a lot. Price for school fees, price for, you know, things that are actually a little bit more scarce than your average thing on the shelf in a supermarket. So I don't know. All I know is that for the first time in my life, and I'm 52 now, in the last 2 years, I've noticed massive price increases, like 35%, 40% price increases on items that we regularly buy in the supermarket. And I've never noticed that before. And it's quite shocking. I know a lot of people who are middle class, doing okay, you know, and who are getting to the end of the month, every month, with nothing left over or even a little bit in the red. And that's new. You know, that to me is a signal that
I suppose it's new for Europe.
Yeah,
it's been quite a long time since those things were common here.
Yeah, I've never.
But that's how most of the world survived.
I know. Yeah. I've never known that though. In 50 years, you know, and if you go back another 50 years, my mother and father were both teachers, which is a very badly paid job, and we had a great life. You could have survived off the salary of one teacher in a house and a car and all this kind of stuff. And now you need a double income, a very big double income. And if you want to buy a house, God help you. If you want to buy a house, a mortgage.
But that depends a lot on the country also. Like, of course, the UK, it's like that because that's one of the countries everybody want to go. Like that example I gave earlier about the US. They have no incentive to make your life easier. You're going to go there anyway.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, that's why I favor countries like Estonia, like Georgia, that, yeah, it's very underrated. So you can get much better deals.
Have you got a prediction for what's going to pop up on the radar next? Which country? Like something that people aren't going to yet, but you think probably in time will be a place to go. Somewhere like, I don't know, Tajikistan. I don't know.
Also, I have no idea.
No, I don't know. Like,
there's some interesting projects popping up. Those like every day in different countries. So it's very hard to make this type of prediction, but it's very good to say they're making an effort.
Like where?
Like there was like the Central African Republic that was trying to make all those things with crypto. There's Palau that released this residency system. That's quite interesting also.
Palau?
Yeah, they're not exactly the most...
Where's Palau?
It's in Polynesia, I think.
Polynesia, right. Blimey, we're really going places now. I mean, Central African Republic, I mean, I've been there. It's a terrible, there's conflict everywhere. And I'm pretty sure there still is. I wouldn't necessarily say it's even a good place to be a digital nomad.
I was not saying the sense that I think it's the next good place.
Right.
But there are some things there's a lot of effort in trying to mimic some of those things that smaller countries like Estonia did and succeeded after that. You know, so there are some free cities they're trying to make everywhere also. So maybe one of those places could be the next one. But we have to wait and see. El Salvador, for example, a few years ago, not that long ago, like I don't know, 4 years ago, was the most dangerous country in the world. Now it's one of the safest in Latin America. Like that, things change and change very fast.
What do you think about that situation, El Salvador?
We don't really recommend El Salvador very often because, like, just as quickly as it was cleaned up, it can get messy again. So we would like to see some more years of stability before actually recommending it to people. We had some clients that already went there. They just decided to go because they are all about crypto and were really bought that project, and they had a very good time. But there are people that are more risk takers or they're more risk aversive. Depends what type of profile you have.
What's interesting about El Salvador that I discovered when we were there is that the places that people are relocating to, like El Tunco, El Zonte, the ones that are also the Bitcoin centers, even when the country was run by the gangs, those places were untouched because they were the tourist destinations. And the idea that people gave was before Bukele came, the whole country was in complete turmoil and run by gangs. And it was partly true, but actually there were no murders in El Tunco. There's never been a murder, apparently, or there were places that the gangs didn't do business, and they were the places that foreign people were. So you could argue that as a result, if you position yourself in El Zonte now, Bitcoin Beach or whatever, which has transformed unbelievably. I mean, there are $1 million condos down the beach now, which is amazing when you think about it. That even if something happens to Bukele and the gangs come back, maybe those places would still be safe. I've got plenty of friends, I've known families that have moved there, from Canadians actually.
There's a lot to be excited about for sure. It's just that we try to be a bit more cautious about the type of advice we give, especially because we don't live with the choices we make. So we prefer to give a different approach. Like, we lay everything there on the table. So you want to optimize this aspect of your life? All right, those options would make sense. And then you choose whatever you think is best for you. We explain to you pros and cons, costs, why we think it's a good idea, why we think it's not a good idea. And then you make the decision for yourself.
Well, last word would have to be about back to Tbilisi. How long do you think you're going to stay there then?
At least until May.
And then what?
Then it's all in the open. I might just stay there longer. I might go to the Emirates. I might go to Malaysia. I've never been to Asia other than Doha Airport, so it doesn't really count.
So is part of your traveling strategy to see places as well? It's not just to get the best tax break or the best standard of living or whatever.
Yeah, because, if you're constantly moving, you don't become tax liable in the place you go. So you could even go to a place like France and still not have to pay taxes because you haven't stayed there long enough to create this tax liability with them. So very low bureaucracy, don't need to ask for permission. You just go to the airport. If you're allowed to stay there 3 months in the year, that's all you need to worry about. That's that much bureaucracy you need to worry.
And it doesn't matter who's paying you either, does it? It
could
be
because you're a tourist. Yeah.
So really, you are currently of no fixed abode or whatever. No, unless you're an American, in which case you have to pay tax anyway.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
So I try to go also because there's two places that could be relevant to my clientele. So that's why Emirates would be interesting for me to have this experience, because people can read as many articles as possible. There's like millions of videos everywhere on TikTok, on YouTube, and whatever about any given country. So why should they pay us a consultation and hear from me? So this personal experience, this hearing directly from me, has some weight. For example, in Tbilisi, since I was there, a lot of people are like worried because it's right below Russia. So is it safe? Is it good to go there? Is it a good idea to go there right now? And every month, there's some client of ours that go there if Danilo's there, it should be good enough for me too. So that kind of be this trailblazing type of attitude, I guess, really helps my business.
Nice business if you can get it. You basically get to try your own product out and you get to see the world.
Yeah.
Well, Danilo, thanks for coming in. Really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.